Howdy. Welcome to Between the Bears and the Bulls. I'm Christopher Beavers, and we're incredibly excited to host Jason Harvison, the CEO of Elevate. And we're going to talk about life as a CEO, the leadership qualities of being a CEO, and more importantly, barbecue. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show. So welcome to Between the Bears and the Bulls podcast. We have Jason Harvison, CEO of Elevate, with us today. Jason, thanks for coming by, man.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the next hour or so.
Dude, it's going to be a blast. So obviously, I've known you for a number of years, and we were next door neighbors until I ran you off.
The neighborhood went downhill when you moved in, so I had to get out of there.
It's true. It's true. But we got to know each other as neighbors. One of the best neighbors I've ever had. Wish you were still there, but got to learn a little bit more about you. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, Jason would be awesome to come on the podcast, talk a little bit about your background. So give me a little idea. I mean, talk about the beginning of your career, then becoming CEO of Elevate. I want to hear how that all came to fruition.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of crazy to think that I'm now 27 years into a career. I don't feel that old, but that's where I'm at. Out of business school at A&M, I went to a bank over in Dallas, and it was a great platform for me to learn from because it was a credit training program for a year, then commercial real estate construction lending for about 3 years. But then in 2003, I had a chance to go to a startup. And this startup is where I've been for 22 years now. And making that move back in 2003, I had a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and I went to a company that was losing money. So it was a big jump for me, but I saw an opportunity that was there at what was the predecessor to Elevate. Came in to help on the product side. That thing grew like wildfire. It was a huge success for us. And through the years, I was able to move from product to take on operations, to take on marketing and become chief product officer, then become COO. And then about 5 years ago, I was named president and CEO of the company.
That's awesome. Okay, so tell me again, what does Elevate do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I always like to talk about the problem we're trying to solve before I talk about what we do. Yeah. And so what I think surprises people is in the U.S., over a third of the U.S. is what we consider a non-prime borrower. So they have a FICO score below, call it 650. And so they have a lack of access to credit. And then you look at about 40% of consumers couldn't cover a $500 expense that they needed to, so they have a lack of savings. And then about 50% have high income volatility. So month to month, their income swings by 40 or 50%. Wow. So you look at this and you have a lack of savings, a lack of access to credit, and high income volatility. When an unexpected expense occurs, they have nowhere to go. Right. And so at Elevate, we've created a technology platform. Everything we do is completely online. Neither we're the lender or we'll license our platform to other banks to help serve these non-prime consumers that get them through their time of need.
Man, that's what a story, right? I mean, it's interesting when you think about kind of how your advancement, as you were talking about. I mean, that many years and starting off from the lower end of the company all the way to the very top. So talk about some of those pivotal moments within that kind of journey that took you to where you started, right? All the way to, being at the top.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One, I say this to myself, I say it to my team, I say it to my kids. Be willing to say yes. Yeah. I mean, you never know what opportunity is going to be in front of you and how long you get the chance to do that. And through my career, for whatever reason, as we grew, I mean, the company got more complex. There was other opportunities. When we needed somebody to take something on, I was always the first to raise my hand. And I didn't always know what I was going to be able to do or if I could do the job, but I was willing to dive in and learn with the team. So I think being willing to take a chance is a huge way to progress, because then you're seen as, this is somebody I can count on. Yeah. Then you go from that. The thing that I most appreciate by being a young executive and taking on bigger teams soon is I learned the benefit of having highly talented people work for you. Mm-hmm. So I'll use an example. When I took on our operations department, I had a lady who was, I think she was a senior director at that point. She knew more about operations. She'd actually forgotten more about operations than I would ever learn. But she made my life easy. And I saw the benefit of hiring A talent and hiring people that you could count on. And I think so many times people, as they move up through the organization, they want to hire people that they think they're stronger than, and it holds them back. Yeah. And to really be successful, that team is what's going to get you there. And so I was I benefited greatly from learning that very early on in my career. And if you look at my team today, that's what helped us be successful. Is I hired a great team, and they do a lot of great work, and it makes me look good.
Yeah, So is that approach of saying yes to opportunities why you're here today as well, right?
Yes, I always say if something makes you a little bit nervous and uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but a little bit excited, then it's the right level to push you outside of your comfort zone. So this is my first podcast with somebody, and I felt like I needed to do something like that. So happy to be here today.
Hey, I appreciate that you took that approach to this as well. I think it's fascinating too when you think about your journey through that. Talk a little bit about kind of, if you look back, how would you have done things differently? Would you have done things differently kind of in this progression to where you are today with the company?
Yeah, I can't say I do it all that differently because I like where I ended up.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think...
and things maybe that you wish you'd known early on, right? Yeah. And saying, okay, if I'd have known this, it would have helped this path, or,
Yeah, I'll probably tie that more into the last 4 or 5 years as I become CEO. Because I think in that time frame, you really learn that you need to have your own voice.
Yeah.
And I think for the first year or two, you have so many people that are trying to tell you how to run things and what you should do, and here's a great idea. And you gotta have your own voice. And I think learning that as a CEO was critical for me the last few years. Mm-hmm. I wish I would have known that even as a COO to have a stronger voice back then as well. But I think making it your voice, your ideas, kind of, with the collaboration of your team, I think is big. And then, the other thing is you got to be ready to make decisions that aren't going to make everybody happy. And I think so many times people want to make a decision and explain it to everybody and make sure everybody is on board. As you work for a larger organization, we've got 300, 350 employees. We'll do between $400 and $500 million of revenue. Wow. I have too big of a team that I can't explain every decision to everybody. So you have to be comfortable saying, this is what I think is the right thing to do. I fully believe it. And it's not going to make everybody happy. And I can't explain it to everybody. Mm-hmm. But hopefully they know I have positive intentions for everybody that's on my team to go forward with it.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because it seems like nowadays it's very rare to see somebody with a company for so long. Right. I mean, it's like every couple years somebody's changing a job. You look at LinkedIn profiles and it's like 20 different jobs there, right? What's kept you at the same place? Because I'm sure you had opportunities all throughout to go to different places that you said, you know what? No, this is the place that I want to be. Talk a little bit about why you stayed in the same place. And obviously it was the right decision from where you are right now.
Yeah, so. I love this question. I get it. I mean, I'm coming up on 22 years of being at this company, so I get asked a lot. I always say it's 3 things. First is I'm passionate about what we do. Yeah. And so we talked about the non-prime consumer that we help out. And I think back to my childhood. And, I grew up with my mom and stepdad and 2 brothers. We had, it's a stretch to say we're middle income. Yeah. We didn't know it, but, there was times where we could have used products like we have in the market today that would have helped us out. And so when I hear the customer testimonials, the impact we have on our customers' lives and the impact we're making, I mean, there's, we've served close to 3 million consumers over the last 20 years. Wow. So we've helped quite a few people. And so I'm passionate about what we do. The second thing is I've got a great team I work with. I mean, when I come to work every day, they're my coworkers and my employees, but they're also friends. And so it's a great environment that I'm blessed to get to lead this team. It's a great opportunity that I don't take for granted. And so if you get an environment where you work with people you like, it's not that often everybody gets to find that. And the last thing is, even though I'm 22 years into this space, I learn something every day. Yeah. And so when I look at people, I go, well, why would I leave? I mean, if I have something I'm passionate about, I work with people that I care about, and I get to learn something every day, why would I take the risk to go somewhere else and do that? So that's kept me here. As long as I have those 3 things here, I'll be here until my time's done or somebody asks me to leave. But until then, I'm very happy with what we've got going.
I love that. I mean, I say that all the time. Love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life. Right. And I mean, literally every single thing that you just talked about there, I think about the way that we run Beavers Wealth Management. It's the same deal. It's like a family. We work together as a family, not only our clients, but the people who work on the team. Right. It's one family. And so,
well, literally some of it is your family.
Yeah, exactly. And it is exactly. That's exactly right. But it just makes it for an environment to where you're talking about. And I don't have 22 years yet, but almost 16 into ours, and it really does make a difference. It's that ability to come in and say, man, I enjoy the people I'm getting to be around, and I'm passionate about my why, right? People ask us that all the time, right? And it sounds like your why is the same reason, but it's like, if you have a strong why on what it is that you do every day and why you get up in the morning, that can make all the difference in the world, right? So I love to hear that. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the business journey, because what was so fascinating for me when we were neighbors, I got to kind of hear about some of this that was going through.
Right.
But what's interesting is Elevate was private, then y'all went public,
Right.
and now you're private again.
Right.
Right. Okay. So you've seen that kind of transition that's happened throughout. So kind of go through that. Talk a little bit about it, because I imagine you've seen some pretty interesting things.
So I'll give you the short version, because
Okay.
we could do 2 or 3 podcasts on that journey of what just took place with a lot that went on there. But you go back to 2005, 2006, the VC market was hot.
Yeah.
And we went out, and I still have so much fun telling the story, because we went out, myself and my CEO at that time, to raise capital, and we weren't really actively looking. We got cold called to see if we needed capital.
Cold call?
Yes.
Cold calling works,
Yes.
actually? Okay.
Yeah. And so somebody reached out to us and said, hey, we're interested in offering you some capital. So we started that whole process. I think we had 10 meetings and had 8 term sheets.
Really?
So it was just a fascinating time to go out and raise capital. We ended up narrowing it down to 3 VCs, 2 of which were Sequoia Capital and Technology Crossover Ventures.
Okay.
And we called all 3 to come back in for a second interview. And Sequoia Capital is the who's who of venture capitalists. And when we called them, they go, we don't come back for second interviews. You just take our offer. I said, well, hey, we're Texas guys. We're kind of getting into this. Come on down. And so we ended up
and they did it?
And they did it,
They
yes.
came? Okay.
So we ended up raising capital with Technology Crossover Ventures and Sequoia Capital. And so once you bring that money in, the clock starts.
Yeah.
And I always say it's great when you have extremely successful partners, because they don't need the money, they just want it, and so they can be very patient with you. And so they were great partners of ours, but you fast forward into the 2016, 2017 time, they'd been with us for longer than most investments took place, and it was time to figure out what this thing was worth and go out to the public markets. And so we attempted to go public in 2016. The markets just, as we were on the road, our CEO and CFO on the road, the markets just tanked and the IPO market shut down. And so we had to pull the offering back. And then in 2017,
how close were you to actually?
Oh, they were on the road.
They were
doing road shows. They were in the 2 weeks leading up.
Okay. All right.
I'll tell you how close we actually were.
Yeah.
They were wrapping up the road show. I'm on a flight to New York with my wife, the rest of the execs, and their wives. I'm communicating on the plane with our head of communications, and she texts me and says, the deal's off.
As you're flying to New York?
So as we get off the plane, I have to pull a group of 8 to 10 people together. They're flown up for an IPO process and say, we're not going public.
So that really was, you were that close.
We were that close.
Okay.
And so fast forward to 2017, we were able to get the company public in April of 2017. Had a nice run as a public company for a while. And then I think the markets, just didn't understand or appreciate the market that we were in. When you went through COVID back in 20, we probably lost 25% of our balances. So we had to start to grow again. But we had a few pressures that really hit us in 21 and 22 coming out of COVID with those lower balances. And the company just wasn't valued what I thought it should be valued at. And it became an opportunity for outside parties. The interesting thing is the banker who took us public back in 2017 the day after we went public, he left his investment bank, started his fund up, and he's the guy, him and his team is who bought us.
You're
and
kidding
helped us
me.
take us private.
Oh,
and so we closed to go private in 23. And I think what he saw and what I totally believe in as well was the market didn't understand the opportunity that was there.
Yeah.
We needed to reposition some things, and so we were able to do a pivot. We kind of started it in 22, did a lot of it in 23, and just completely turned the business around and by being private and having him believe in us. And it was just a fantastic opportunity for us.
So when you went public, did you go back up to New York for the second time that actually happened?
So that's a fun story also.
Yeah.
So as they're going out to do the road show and you're trying to build a book of who's going to be your first set of investors, pricing started to change.
Right.
One of our lender had some opportunity to participate in the deal. We didn't think they were. It caused a little bit of chaos at the 11th hour. And so once again, it was still a little bit uncertain of what was going to happen the night before. And so literally it was probably 11 o'clock the night before. My CEO and CFO are in New York. We've canceled all the execs to go up because we weren't sure what's going to happen. I bought a ticket for 5 a.m. just to go in case. And I said, if we go public, I'll be there. If we don't, I'll have a beer with the guys
Yes.
And hang out. And I'll never forget, it's the best cab ride I ever had, because I land in New York and I get in the cab and say, hey, take me to the New York Stock Exchange. And we went up and we ended up ringing the closing bell there.
You were actually ringing the bell?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's awesome, man.
That's one of those once in a lifetime experiences.
That is very cool. What a fun story. So second time is charm time,
Second
right?
time,
So
yeah.
it wasn't the okay.
Not the third.
Not
second,
the
yeah.
third. It was second.
Yeah.
That's good. So then you've kind of experienced in managing, a public and then a private company. Tell me the differences for you as like a CEO. I mean, do you prefer one versus the other? I mean, what's that like from a management perspective?
Yeah, so I was named CEO in the fall of 2019, and so I had 3.5 years of being a public company CEO. It's exciting. Don't get me wrong. I mean, every quarter, you have your earnings calls and your investor meetings.
This was during COVID too that you were a part of it, right?
Yeah, I didn't pick the best time to become a CEO.
I was going to say that is not the most ideal, ideal time.
So I was named CEO. I was interim CEO in July of 2019. Officially CEO in November of 2019. 3 months later, we had COVID break out and everybody went to work from home. And also, one thing that I didn't think would happen, we actually had an external development team that was outsourced for us in Belarus. So I didn't realize that the Russia-Ukraine issue would be an issue for me. So I had a pandemic and a war that impacted me in the first 9 months of being CEO.
Welcome, right?
Yeah, right. So definitely dived in on the deep end on that. But going through that whole process, I mean, it's exciting to be able to meet, when you have the right investors and get to meet with them. They can be priceless for you. This with input and they have and the value that's there. And one thing I didn't appreciate the first year of being CEO, but started to cultivate that, was the investor base. Yeah. And as you go out and talk to investors and try to turn over that investor base to make sure they fit where you're trying to take the organization. Mm-hmm. And I didn't appreciate that the first year. And so it was exciting. It's a little bit of work to get ready for those earnings calls.
Yeah.
It takes probably 6 weeks every quarter out of your life.
Does it really?
Wow. Well, it just depends on how much you want to put into it. But between board meetings and getting the 10Qs ready and earnings prep, and then you do calls with investors for a day or two afterwards. It takes time out of the business. And so that's probably the biggest drawback for your CEO and CFO, is the time it takes out of the business. But it creates some opportunities for you. And I just don't know that those opportunities that usually are access to liquidity, we actually capitalize on.
Right.
And so by going public, I shrunk my board from 9 people to 3 people. What I really love about being private is there's complete alignment between me and my board and my investors.
Yeah.
And so it's the alignment is, let's maximize cash flow. So all the incentives for me and my management team and employees are aligned with our investors. There's a lot less voices trying to give you input on what to do. And so I totally appreciate and really enjoyed the IPO and the public company experience. But it's a lot of fun being private and being able to have a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah. I'll read between the lines on which one I think you prefer more based on that conversation. But tell me, I always find it fascinating because, as an advisor, we'll listen to earnings calls, right, for different companies. And it seems like to me, sometimes those analysts are really trying to get, they're almost trying to catch, CEOs, and they're wanting them to get them to say something that perhaps they don't want to say. So what was it like going through the earnings calls? I mean, did you ever feel like they were trying to torpedo you? And I imagine over time, you started seeing through some of this stuff, right?
That's a great question. And you learn to be a little bit of a politician on how to answer questions.
I imagine.
I remember getting ready for the first earnings call, the first 2 or 3 earnings calls. It was a lot of prep for me. And we had my comms team and an external comms team, and we'd go through what we called murder boards.
Okay.
And so it was basically me sitting in a room and them just grilling me with questions. And my process was, let's talk about what questions we could get. Let's talk about what the answers. And if you walked in my desk, I might have 30 note cards on my desk of questions, so I could practice.
Yeah, you were ready.
And then you go through these murder boards 2 or 3 times, and then you go through your first one. And I'll tell you what, the way we did ours is the earnings call portion was pre-recorded.
Oh, okay.
So you'd actually record that a couple days before, then you'd go in and kind of the call would start and you just hit play.
Right.
So you got to kind of relax for a little bit.
That's good.
But when that call ends and it's go time,
questions,
you don't know what's coming your way.
Yeah.
And you know that your board's listening, your employee base is listening, you might have regulators listening or competitors listening. And it's intense. But you go through 2 or 3 of those and all of a sudden you realize, I need to be really good at these 10 questions.
Yeah.
And every quarter there's going to be 2 or 3 I need to tweak. And all of a sudden your prep goes from a long period of time to a much shorter period of time.
Yeah.
And you get a lot more comfortable with it. But that part was a great experience. Talk about earlier of getting out of your comfort zone and trying something new. that definitely checked the box for me on that. But it was a lot of fun and getting ready for that, and being ready for that kind of Q&A piece.
That's cool. So I'm less intimidating than the analyst right now. Are my questions right here are so far so good? You know,
I'm worried you're kind of softening up and you're going to get harder to get into this.
Okay. I promise they don't get any harder.
Okay.
They don't get any harder. So you were well prepared for this one, having to deal with analysts, you know, for many years while y'all were public. So talk a little bit about, you know, a CEO and what a daily life of a CEO is, because I always find it fascinating talking to successful people who are managing. I mean, you have how many people at Elevate that you're managing?
So we got about 315 employees.
Okay, my goodness. So 315 employees. What's it like a day in the life of the CEO of Elevate, right?
Yeah, it's no days are ever the same.
Right.
Probably the easiest way to say it. And so the way I think about my days is I structure my mornings before I get to work. They're very structured.
Yes.
Because I know anything past 9 o'clock is unstructured.
Yeah.
And so I'm one of those guys. I'm up early. I love to have a few moments to kind of have to myself and get a workout in. And so I know when I come in, I've already done something really hard for the day, so I'm ready for whatever's thrown at me. But in general, I try to schedule Tuesdays through Thursdays as kind of business updates and functionality and kind of where the business is going. And Mondays and Fridays are a little more open-ended for me to be, you know, forward-looking and thinking about bigger projects that are out there. But what's exciting is you can come in and, I'll just like about this week. I could be on a government affairs call that I'm talking about what the confirmation hearings going on in D.C. Mm-hmm. I could be talking about new models we're building from our credit risk department. I could be talking about our technology platform, how we're trying to integrate new projects. You have employee issues that you're going to have to deal with. And so it's exciting because you walk in and you have to be well-versed in all these and be able to give input. Luckily, I have a great team that helps support me with that gives me good input that we can make decisions with. But, you know, my job is to make sure that we're placing the right bets on the big decisions, that we have the right staffing in place that can get the job done and remove any obstacles that are there, and just communicate where we're going over and over and over.
Yeah. Well, one of the things too that I feel like from a standpoint that I enjoy so much about my own team and job is being able to create a culture, right? That's something that I really enjoy as a business owner and leader. I know you've done, because you've told me some of this stuff. Talk a little bit about the culture of Elevate and some of the activities and things you've done to implement to create that culture of Elevate, because I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah. Let me talk first about some of the communication style, and then we'll go into the culture piece. I think it works. Because I think the communication is top of mind and probably one of the most important things for a CEO and an executive team to do. So it starts with, you talked about the mission. You know, let's make sure that everybody understands the mission and why we're all here. You know, for us, we're trying to be, you know, the most preferred alternative credit provider for the new middle class. So we'll talk about that. Let's make sure everybody understands that. And we talk about doing that by being good today and better tomorrow. And I think that's the easiest way to remember it. So let's help consumers out today, but it's not just a transaction. Let's partner with them where they're going. So you have that kind of foundation to start with to get people aligned with what we're doing here every day. Yeah. And then we have this meeting and communication cadence that we go out through the year. And so every year I'll come up with a theme of what we're trying to accomplish. So we go back a few years ago and we needed to focus on profitability. It was back to profitability. Yeah. And then the next year it was, let's be competitively profitable, because we needed to still focus on profitability, but then we also needed to, you know, focus back on the consumer. And this year our theme is brave ideas, intentional growth, because a great acronym of BIG.
Oh, that's
because
good.
we need to focus on growing the business and looking at new ideas. And so we have, you know, why we exist. Now we have what we're trying to accomplish this year. And then every quarter, what we try to do is we'll have town halls where we communicate, you know, what's going on in the business, and celebrate people that, you know, with certain awards and things like that. And then on those off months, in between those town halls, I have what I call the huddle with Harbison. And so every month, or I'll get on a call. It's great because we have teams that we can use and communicate, either myself or one of my execs. And so the team always knows where we're at and what's going on in the business, and to be very, very transparent. But one of my favorite things that we do is, back to kind of the analyst calls a little bit, is twice a year I'll spend 2 half days just setting up time with each department. And it's an hour, so I'm meeting with my IT department. I just get on camera and say, go. Oof. And they get to ask me questions.
That could be rough. Could be rough.
And they've gotten a little too comfortable with some of the questions they ask. And so I think that creates a culture of transparency and trust. A lot. And, you know, when we went to the Go Private, I told my team, we have to focus on you know, connection, culture, and communications. And so those are the 3 big things. I think we've done a nice job of that. And so then you got to bring in some of the fun stuff. And I think some of the things you like to talk about, every April we have a barbecue contest.
There we go. Now you're speaking my language.
We clear out the parking lot and have, about 10 people that'll participate. I truly think it's rigged because I've got second place the last 2 years in a row. And so either I'm going to have to make some changes on the judges. We'll do that. But, I'm a big dog person, and one of my dogs is very big. I have a big French Mastiff. She comes to the office with me, and it's, while I love just being with her, that's part of why I bring her up there.
Yeah.
But it's also a great way to walk around the office and interact with everybody in the office. And so that communication piece is great. And our team does, we'll do walks outside with them. We usually do a big party at the end of the year with our town halls and things like that. And so our HR team does a really nice job, but we'll do little happy hours in between there as well. So it's fun to have those little things to connect with people.
Man, I love that. Yeah, I miss seeing Holly. Holly, your big Mastiff. It was always great when, living next door to you. I never worried about anything because I knew Holly was going to take care of the whole street.
Our end of the street was safe.
Very safe. It's much less safe now that you're gone. I will definitely say that. But I think that's so cool because it really gets down to the why for people. And when you establish a culture and you have a clear, transparent communication as to what you're trying to achieve, I think it gets people excited about what they're doing, right? And it's a strong why means everything.
One thing we also did in the last couple of years, last year or so, is we did a culture survey. And it was kind of an interesting way to do it. We asked people to pick from 100 attributes and said, what are these words align with your personal values?
Oh, that's cool.
Then where do you think Elevate is today with our values, and where do you think we need to be? And so it kind of gave you a viewpoint of, do they align, or do we have the right employees that align with where we want to be, and does it make sense with where we're going?
That's pretty neat.
And one of the things that came out of that, there's a big focus on accountability, and people said, I'm very accountable in my personal life. That's where I want us to be. And when we saw that, accountability has a definition that can be different for all 300 people. Mm-hmm. And so we solicited input on what that looked like. But once we got that feedback, I had to define accountability for people. And so really what we tried to get across to people is, accountability starts with looking in the mirror. It's not blame. So if you have a culture of blame of, I'm going to hold Chris accountable, he needs to be fired.
Right.
Well, guess what? You have a culture of let's hide the ball, the best.
Yeah.
And that's not what we want.
Great point.
And so when you have an issue that takes place, 90% of the time it's going to be a system issue or a process issue, not a people issue.
Yeah.
So you need to look in the mirror and say, did I give the right requirements? Did I set the right expectations? Did they have the right tools in place to go forward with this? And so what I have to do is make sure it's a safe environment to where I'll admit when I make a mistake. So my execs know that they can admit when they make a mistake. And I've really celebrated, we've had a handful of people when something's gone bump. Think about being a senior manager in an organization and coming into the executive team and saying, hey, here's why the system didn't work, and give an update. And I always highlight, this person's still here working for us. We learned from this and made the system stronger, because this was a system issue, not a people issue, and we improved from it. And if you can create that level of accountability where we're looking at the processes and the systems, every once in a while it'll be a people issue, but mainly it's around the people, it's around the process and the systems. You're continuously improving and making the company better, and you have a safe environment where we can bring problems to the top and learn from them.
Could you do that? I'm curious, could you do that when you were public as easy as what you can do that when you're private?
I think we could do it internally. We could do it
internally.
Yes.
Yeah. It's I think that's a key driver of why Elevate and yourself continue to be so successful, is that culture and that transparency, which pushes the direction of the firm in a positive way. So
appreciate that.
No doubt. So talk a little bit about I'm always fascinated when I talk to successful people like yourself on what made them successful. Right? Was it in your mind that you said, what? I want to be CEO one day? Like, what is it that drove you from where you started at the company to being where you are today? Was that always the goal?
No.
Okay.
But I think you find a lot of successful people. It's hard to say you're successful about yourself, but I think there's always this idea that I can do bigger things, but an inferiority complex where I'm never enough.
Yeah.
And so you're always trying to do more and more and more to prove to yourself, what else can I do? What else can I do? Because I reached this certain level, and okay, well, what's next?
Yeah.
And so there's never a level of complacency to say, I've arrived, I want to be here.
Yeah.
And so for me, early in my career, it was, can I get the title? Can I get a little bit of money or something like that? But then it became about, how can I make an impact on the people I work with? How can I make an impact on the consumers we serve? And for me, it's back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. It's always saying yes to that opportunity that kind of pushes you outside your comfort zone. And I've kind of embraced that my whole life. And so I remember when our CEO left in 2019 and our board said, okay, we're going to go search for a new CEO. I always thought it would be, when I made COO, that was kind of a level I always thought I would want to achieve.
Right.
And I made it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, maybe I'll want to be a CEO of a private company, but I don't know that I ever want to be the CEO of a public company and all that comes with it. But the opportunity was there. And I was like, how many times in your life do you get a chance to be the public company CEO?
Right.
And so, I threw my name in the ring and said, hey, I want a chance at this. And, I'm probably somebody that it's a little bit more laid back on talking about myself.
Yeah.
But that was a short window where I was pretty direct with the board about what I was achieving. I mean, we wrote a letter to the board to say, hey, I want this role and here's what I'm doing to show you that I can do it.
That's awesome.
So I could get it. And, being named CEO was a big deal for me in the fall of 2019. I was very pleased that the board trusted me with that opportunity. And I'm very blessed with the opportunity to get to lead the team that I lead.
Well, and I think it's a testament to you. You said something in that answer, which I think goes back to what I have found when I'm talking to people who are very successful is the humility part of that, right? Because you even said it's a little weird for me to, talk about being successful. And it's interesting because when I talk to people like that, they haven't achieved what they ultimately are going to achieve, right? And you even said this, it's every single day you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I grow a little bit more? Or what's the next thing that we can do? And it's the why that continues to kind of push you there. But it's got to be hard though, staying grounded and having that humility as you've kind of continued to work your way up. But is there any tricks on how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, number one, be married to my wife, and she'll put you in her place real quick.
Exactly. There we go. Spouses keep you grounded.
She keeps me grounded really well. I know. In all seriousness, I think it's two things. One, every day I wake up, I think of what I'm grateful for. Yeah. And this morning I got to wake up. That's actually a good thing to do, right?
No doubt.
In my house, get to go. I'm healthy. I get to go work out. I have my wife there, my kids there, my dog's there, and so there's this groundedness of I'm appreciative of where I'm at this point in my life and get to do the things that I do. So that's number one. And I think the second thing is probably just as big, if not bigger, is as you move up in an organization and you get these titles and things, your world shrinks. Yeah. And you get in this echo chamber of, look, I have a team that is pretty direct with me, so they kind of keep me in check also, but they also kind of build you up. So you hear a lot of good things. And if you stay in this echo chamber, you can get a big head. And so, and you've been out with me before, and you've probably even seen this. Yeah. I love talking to people when I'm out. Right. And the more you talk to people, you get a better understanding of what's going on. And a couple examples of that, like there's a place I love to go eat lunch at, and I always talk to the ladies that help check me out. And every once in a while I'm there on a Monday and I ask the lady, like, hey, how was your weekend? And she goes, well, I was at my other job all weekend. Yeah. And she's got the best attitude I've ever seen in my life. And yet she's working 6-7 days a week. It's amazing. So she's the hardest worker and the best attitude. And it just kind of grounds me to go, oh yeah, I need to be a little bit more in check with where I'm at. Yep. Or there's a place I like to go to sometimes, and got to know this kid that was there. And just having conversations, and you hear about, he had a less than ideal childhood. Mm-hmm. He's struggling to kind of figure out where he wants to go, and you see the challenges that people are happening. And so the more you can get out of your echo chamber, because if you're talking to your execs or other peers in the industry, or you're going to the club or something, you can get a big head on you that's not grounded in reality. I love talking to people wherever I go, and when you do that, it helps keep you grounded of, that you're blessed to be where you're at, and there's people out there that are working their ass off, that are doing great things, and might not have the level of financial success that you've had.
It's so true. I mean, I had mentioned to you that Emma and I just had the opportunity to come back from Vietnam. Right. And so I think what you're talking about is realizing and seeing how others live, and the hardships that people go through, and how lucky we are, right, to be in the positions that we are. It definitely keeps you grounded and gives you a whole new appreciation for life.
What I love is you see I hate to see them having the hardships, but I love the attitude they have.
Absolutely.
With it. And it's like, how can I have a bad attitude with where I'm at?
Exactly. And that was the thing that blew us away when we were traveling, is how happy people were. Right. They had so little, and yet they were so genuinely happy, and it made you realize, it's like, to your point, you got to stay grounded, because the issues and problems that we deal with on the daily basis, yes, there's still issues and problems, but it's nothing compared to what people all over. So I appreciate you staying in that. So let's talk about something that's very important to both of us, okay? And so tell me, what does Olay mean?
So that is OILE.
Yes, exactly.
And that stands for a once in a lifetime experience.
Which you coined this. This is your.
And my wife saw right through it because it was really a way for me to get to go to certain events that I would tell my wife, honey, this is a once in a lifetime experience that I need to go to. And finally, after the third or fourth time I used it, she goes, you can't have that many once in a lifetime experiences. And so it started as a negotiating tool, and now she's kind of seen right through it.
Right.
But it's kind of a fun way when things come up that, we're blessed with certain opportunities that we get to do, and I think you got to take advantage of those. And so that's that. I coined that term for getting to go do some really fun stuff.
I love, and we've actually done a few Olays once in a lifetime experiences ourselves. So I a couple years ago, it didn't seem like that long ago, but
fall of 23.
Yeah, fall of 23. Got to see the Rangers World Series win. Yeah. We flew out to Arizona. Tell me, I remember it, but tell us that story on how that all worked, because that was something that almost didn't happen.
Yes. So big baseball fans, both of us, and we said if they get a chance to win it, we got to be there. So it was 2023 Halloween night. The Rangers go up big in Game 4. We go, tomorrow night they're going to have a chance. And so I tell my wife, like, hey, tomorrow it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm heading to Arizona. And she goes, well, where are you staying? I said, I don't know. She goes, well, where are your tickets? Like, we don't have tickets. And so we booked tickets to fly out the next morning. Obviously, you were with me. We met up, and the worst traffic we've ever seen to get to the airport. I traveled almost 2 million miles in my life, and that was the absolute worst time. And I think we pulled up to the airport with maybe 20 minutes before the flight took off.
I think you're right, yes.
And somehow we made the flight. And that was the worst part of our day, which was a great thing. Because we made it to Arizona. We were able to find tickets that were great. Somehow we just randomly picked a hotel that was on the train line to get us into the ballpark. And, it's funny because so many people say, oh, if my team ever has a chance to do this, I'll be there.
Right, yeah.
And that stadium holds 45, 50,000 people.
Right.
And I can't imagine there was more than 5,000 to 8,000 Ranger fans there.
No.
And so, you take some risks, you roll the dice, and lo and behold, we were there when the Rangers won their first World Series. We got to stand right next to the dugout, see them go underneath their champagne bath, hold the trophy up. That absolutely was a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Without a doubt. And you remember the next day on CBS Sports, they were showing a picture of, World Series, champions, Texas Rangers, and there's a picture of fans, and it's me and you on the front of CBS Sports, going nuts for that. So, that was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And I want you to know that I've incorporated this phrase within my life as well. And Emma now very much understands and knows these once-in-a-lifetime experiences, but it seems to be we are finding ourselves in a lot of these once-in-a-lifetime experiences.
I think that's a good place to be.
It's a good place to be, right? So we'll see how long we can keep using that for. Any future ones that you're looking to experience?
Well, I mean, obviously we're both A&M fans.
No doubt.
And as a lifelong A&M fan, you always fall short. So you're always waiting for that moment where we can recreate that. We had a small chance last year when we went to the College World Series, and we tried to be there to create that moment.
Exactly.
Didn't pan out.
Not
but
quite.
I think it's that thing. You, as you go through life, you get these chances that come up, and you have to roll the dice a little bit.
Yeah.
And sometimes you make the investment and you go and it doesn't work out, but sometimes it turns out to be one of the greatest moments. And it's that way in business. It's that way in your personal life. And I think you want to make sure that you don't miss out on those opportunities.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about being a yes man, right? Yeah. Have you seen the movie, the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man, right? So it's the same kind of deal where it's like, how many times are we presented with opportunities and we figure out excuses on why not to do it? Because I mean, quite frankly, it's like it would have been very easy for us, and I know we're bringing up a fun instant like that, but I'm thinking about just in business, it's very easy to say, oh, you know what? I'm exhausted. I've got something else going on. You know what? I'll figure out an excuse on why not to do it versus just saying yes. And then you put yourself in situations. I know from a business perspective, I've met people that I would have never met that ended up becoming great centers of influence or even clients that if I had just come up with an excuse, I would have never met them, right? And so it's that mindset of saying yes to these experiences.
Well, I mean, we all go to conferences or whatever it might be. It's easy to sit in your hotel room and do nothing.
Exactly.
Get out and talk to people.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. So let's talk a little bit about from aspiring leaders, right? So I'm sure you have people that come to you all the time asking for advice or, thought leadership, whatever it is. As an aspiring leader, what are some of the recommendations or things that you could tell people who are either starting off in their career, or maybe they're in the thick of their career, but they're continuing to want to grow?
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with kind of your own personal brand or who you are. And
Yeah.
I think people see through unauthentic people.
Yeah.
You have to be authentic. And I can think back to me the first year or so of being CEO, when my HR team would write an email, I would send it out under my name, or legal would. People saw right through that.
Yeah.
And I'd have people come to me like, why do you send that out? We know that's not you. And so I think you got to find your own tone, your own voice, and your style. So be authentic. So I think that's something you can carry on throughout your career.
Yeah.
I think being very transparent in the good and the bad. I had to make a call yesterday on some bad news to our chairman of the board. I don't sit on it. You
Right.
be very transparent. I don't hide it. It is what it is. We'll find a solution to it. But you got to be quick with information, both good and bad, and make sure that you're transparent on everything so you're trusted. And then I think lastly, or last two things, I think the communication part is key.
Yeah.
Always communicate what your priorities are, where you're going, and be able to have those tough conversations when you need to hold people accountable. And the last thing is invest in your team. I talked about this earlier when we chatted.
That's right.
I love that I learned early on, when you have a strong team, it makes your life 1,000 times easier. And so many times, you hear it all the time, A players hire A players and B players hire C players. I see people want to hire somebody a little too junior, and it just makes their life hard. And I always tell my team this: if you ever have that employee that when they walk in your office, it kind of drains you a little bit. I mean, I always think about people as you have batteries and vacuums.
Right. That's great.
And
That's
so
great.
if you have a vacuum that walks in and sucks the energy out of you, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to happen eventually. You're just delaying it. So try to get as many batteries as you can around you and as few vacuums as you have.
I love that. That's really good. And I love what you said too about attacking problems, because I think I see that a lot where, it's those things that you don't really want to deal with. Nobody likes dealing with a problem or having to deliver negative news,
right.
or, attacking those problems head on. So much of that can be solved if you just take that transparent approach and you handle it first thing. So I'll tell you personally, I try to do the things that are the most difficult or make those calls like first off in the day.
Right.
Because to your point, it's like if you get those things and you start off with that base, it's like the rest of the day kind of comes easy. Right. So anytime there's an issue or a problem, I don't waste time. I immediately go to it and attack it and make that tough phone call.
And think about the flip to that. If you wait till the end of the day or the next day, you have this anxiety that builds on what could, so you're unproductive with everything else.
Exactly.
So go ahead and get it knocked out. Now you have the rest of your day to be productive and benefit your team.
Yeah. Lessons learned in leadership, anything that, you've kind of seen as you've gone through this progression that you go back and you say, some of that may be the transparency. And,
I think we hit on a lot of that. It's communication, it's team, it's being authentic.
Yeah.
All those things just kind of resonate.
And our mission statement, we've talked a little bit about it at Beavers Wealth Management, is we want to empower and educate the families and businesses we serve. And so, it's interesting, especially in the industry that you're in, but what can we do as people and parents to kind of address the issue of a lack of formal financial literacy? I think that to me, at least when I see and I'm thinking about the next generation, what did you do as a parent? What should we be thinking about for this next generation in terms of having a better understanding of finances?
Yeah, it's a great question, and my kids now are 24, 22, and 19. Yeah. And I'm realizing it's not what I did do; it's probably what I should have done. It's probably a better way to answer this.
Okay.
Because my oldest, they're up in Seattle working for Amazon, and he had a car accident and realized he only had liability insurance and didn't have full coverage. And so there's a lesson learned there. And I think sitting down and having those conversations on practical applications of consumer finance, sitting down and making sure you're going to have a debit card early on, and we're going to have a budget around that so you can learn how to manage those money before you go out and create a big problem for yourself. Because I think we probably all have that credit card from college that I got the T-shirt and now this T-shirt cost me $700.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want your kids getting into that. So I think sharing kind of the journey of you and your spouse, and then sharing with them on how to manage that early on. Let them have that debit card. Let them make a mistake or two and feel the pinch of that credit card or that debit card not getting approved when they go make a payment because they didn't follow up very closely. It's a good learning experience when that thing gets declined.
Yeah, and that's something I know that we're focusing more on, is having those conversations with our clients and the next generation and their kids, because it's things that we know, having been around the block a few times, but maybe we sometimes don't necessarily think about it for our kids. And I think about that with our daughter, who's almost 2. It's like, okay, when is it too early? And it's like, no, we're going to talk to her about this stuff, balancing checkbooks, all that kind of stuff as early as possible. So but I think we may be a little too early with her. So
she doesn't have to save as many receipts as you save.
Yeah, exactly. Please, I don't want her to have to inherit that that burden, if you will. Okay, so I'm going to finish it off with kind of the most important point and question out there. And, I was, when you were next door, to me, I was kind of your professional barbecue, taste tester, right? And so I know that I would get the knock on the door or a text and say, hey, are you hungry? Because I made way too much barbecue, right? So you are what I would consider a master griller, right? How in the world did you get into the whole barbecue side of, because it really is, it's like a way of life. It's not just a hobby, it's a way of life.
Barbecue is a passion, either you have it or you don't. And I always tell people when I cook for you, that's kind of my love language, because what do we not have a lot of? It's time.
Right.
So you go cook barbecue, that's not, you don't throw it in the microwave for 30 minutes and it comes out. And so when I cook for somebody, that's my way of showing how much I care about them, want to spend time with them, have a fellowship. But I have a really unique experience with this, because I had a VP of technology who was into barbecue. He was on Barbecue Pitmasters. He started his own line of seasonings, and his own personal business and brand got so big. We had this conversation about 7 or 8 years ago. It's like, it's time for you to leave. And he's one of the biggest brands in barbecue now.
That's so awesome.
It's so fun to watch his success and do something he loves and he's passionate about, and seeing those challenges he has of building a business to the size it is. So I was lucky to have him in my organization. And so as I started trying to figure out barbecue, I remember going, probably 8, 9 years ago, going to a barbecue competition and hanging out with him while he's prepping stuff.
And so great.
I had literally one of the best guys in barbecue that worked for me that got to teach me barbecue, how to use my green egg, how to use a pellet grill, how to trim a brisket, how to go through all the process. And luckily, he still speaks with me, even though he's gotten so big that I can ask him questions from time to time.
The greatest mentor of all time,
Yeah. I think that's a great thing to always have, is the team of people around you. And I always think about some of my success, and whether it's at work or with fitness or with mental health or whatever, people might not know they're on my team. Like he's on my barbecue team, but he doesn't know it. You might be on my, you help with kind of my wellness, both physically and mentally. We text and communicate. I think it's great when guys can have, and everybody can have, just a few people that they're on their team that help them from a business standpoint or a personal standpoint or a fitness standpoint. It's great.
Dude, this has been a blast. I really appreciate you taking the time and saying yes, like you said, to an opportunity that maybe you wouldn't initially have thought to say yes, because this was a lot of fun for me. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know, it was a great time hanging out and sharing what little I've learned through the years, but happy to do it.
Dude, you're the man.
Thanks so much,
Jason.
Chris.
I appreciate it, bud.
Take care.